Hello, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. My name's Amy Thompson and I'm the Head of Policy Engagement at the University of Bath, and I'm one of the co-directors of the ActNowFilm alongside my colleague Amy Monroe-Forth from Cambridge Zero. So ActNowFilm project is a collaborative project between Cambridge Zero and the Institute for Policy Research at the University of Bath. The project started in the lead up to COP26 and has been running for 4 years. This year's film weaves together the insights of global climate experts with the personal experiences and direct actions of youth climate leaders, and we believe is a powerful testament to the critical contributions of young people in our efforts to tackle the climate crisis. In the past few months alone, we have seen devastating events across the world that emphasize the urgent need for action. From extreme rainfall and flooding in Valencia in October, in Central Europe in September, flooding in Sudan in August, and Nigeria, Niger, Chad, Cameroon in September, Hurricanes Milton and Helene across southeastern USA, Typhoon Yagi in Southeast Asia in September, Tropical Storm Trami in the Philippines in October, and the 6th typhoon in a month currently over for the Philippines right now. But the climate crisis is more than these extreme events. Sea level rise is threatening island states, saltwater intrusion is affecting farming yields, and we are seeing the loss of indigenous knowledge and livelihoods and impacts on mental and physical health and well-being at a global scale. There is another aspect of the climate crisis that deserves more attention than it often receives, and that is the youth climate leaders from across the world who are responding with creativity and innovation. These are young people who are already living with the consequences of climate change, who have experienced it not as a distant threat, but as a harsh reality, and who have chosen to take action. For this year's ActNowFilm, we invited young people to share their experiences of the climate change impacts and the remarkable actions that they are taking in response, and we're deeply moved by the stories we heard. Our film introduces you to 8 of these youth climate leaders, but they are just some of the inspiring young people around the world who are at the forefront of climate action and solutions. The message from the ActNowFilm and its participants is clear. Youth climate leaders are experts in their own right. They are effective agents of change, and they have the drive and passion needed to leverage bolder and faster action. Despite the vital perspectives that they bring, they are, in many cases, left out of the very negotiations that will determine their futures, and this must change. Young people have demonstrated that they are capable, ready, and committed to be part of the urgent national and global climate debates and negotiations. Now is the moment to integrate their skills, ambitions, and capabilities into national climate negotiation teams to address this crisis effectively and with the urgency it needs. It is also important to provide robust training and development opportunities that enable young people to engage meaningfully in these critical processes. It is their future that is at stake, and they must have a voice in shaping climate policy. Today we are delighted to be joined by 2 of the film, and thank you so much for coming. You'll hear from them soon. So we're next going to play a screening of the trailer, followed by a panel discussion where there'll be the opportunity for your questions. The film itself premiered on Saturday and is available from our website, and you will be able to see the link at the end of this event. For now, thank you so much for coming, and I'd like you to introduce the trailer to ActNowFilm. Thank you.
What we are negotiating, what we are deciding is not about us. It is about the next generations.
We were talking about youth inclusion for a long time, and now it's high time to speak about meaningful youth inclusion.
Young people from around the world have lived experience of climate change impacts.
We don't even know if in 50 years we'll be able to live on our land.
When Super Typhoon struck, I felt terrified.
In the end, we are speaking of a global crisis.
We can't rule out we've crossed a tipping point.
In the climate negotiation, are they aware about the losses that we are leaving?
Our future depends on decisive and inclusive action.
And the time is now.
We are charged up to fight and bring justice to our world.
If it's our future that's being discussed, we need to be there.
We need to make sure that young people are involved in the negotiation room, but also in the negotiation teams.
Brilliant, thank you. I hope you can all hear me okay. I'm Dr. Amy Monroe-Forth. I lead on climate change education for the University of Cambridge's Climate Change Initiative, Cambridge Zero, and I'm utterly delighted to be joined today by two people who are far more expert in this topic than me, Dawda and Dorcas. And I'd like to begin by handing over to both of you and asking Dorcas and then Dawda to introduce yourselves and to tell us a little bit about what drew you to climate action in the first place. Why did you want to get involved with this?
Okay. Hello everyone, I'm Dorcas Wakio and I'm from Kenya. And I'm a climate activist and also a gender justice advocate. And I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much, Amy, for organizing this amazing event. And my passion for being who I am today, like in terms of this climate action, was brought about by the concern and the urgency and the need to be part of the solution. We have seen how Africa is affected by climate change in terms of rampant floodings, in terms of droughts. I have seen that and I experienced that in terms of the heat waves that are affecting us, especially in South Coast Kenya. And through this, I was pushed to become a leader in my community and to bring change. Also seeing how women and girls are lacking the menstrual health education, awareness on how climate change is affecting even their livelihoods and everything. So all these brought me to become a grassroots leader through my a local NGO called MPI. We work to empower young girls and women in terms of mangrove restoration, in terms of seaweed farming and beekeeping. Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dorcas. Over to Dawda.
All right. Thank you so much. I will begin by thanking each and every one of you for making it here to listen to our stories, but also to share this moment with us. I also want to thank the ActNowFilm team for giving us a platform to share our stories and that of our communities. I am Dawda Cham and I am from the Gambia, the smallest country in mainland Africa. We are on the Atlantic Ocean, or the shore of the Atlantic Ocean, and we are one of the 100 most vulnerable countries to climate change, and we are ranked top 10 out of the over 198 or 200 countries in the world. We are ranked top 10 when it comes to sea level rise and coastal erosion. And research has even shown that a 1 meter rise in sea level will potentially inundate 8% of my country's land area, which means that our capital city, Banjul, in the next 50 years may not even exist because it will be under the waters. So this is where I come from, and being part of this film has given me that opportunity to share our story so that the people out there could hear our stories, and maybe, just maybe, that could motivate them when they come to the COPs and negotiate on our behalf, and negotiate on behalf of communities, vulnerable communities for that matter, who do not have the opportunity to be in these platforms. So for me, that was really a great opportunity, and I really want to thank the team for that. So how I got into this space, yesterday I was just answering the same question, but yes, it's important. So I was fortunate to attend a training when I was in my 8th grade in my primary school level. This was when I was introduced to environment and climate change issues. And that was the first time I hear the word climate change, or the phrase climate change and global warming. And this was really very interesting to me, and I had to go and do research. At the time, I did not have access to internet or have computers or mobile phone, so I had to go to the internet cafe to find out what really climate change and global warming is. And when I read about it, I was really worried that this is going to snatch our future from us as young people. And that's how I started my advocacy within my community and my school, trying to sensitize my peers, also organizing cleanup exercises, until I moved to the city where I was doing my high school, and I was fortunate to join an organization where we lead projects on disaster management. We work with farmers, but also we sensitize the communities, and even have climate education programs where we teach young people. So that's how I got into this space. Until today, I've been able to make it here. That a lot of young people back home whom I am accountable to, and my communities really look up to me, that when I come to platforms like this, I can advocate on their behalf, that people who are not there to experience the struggles that they go through would be able to listen to us, so that they make decisions that would actually mitigate or help us adapt to the severe consequences of climate change. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dawda. And thank you for telling us these stories about how you've both grown in your communities and you've seen a need and you've been the one to take that step forward and to choose to lead into that need. I think it's really, really inspirational for a lot of young people and people in general, actually. But sort of moving on to the kind of next part of the conversation, the film is really calling for officially integrating youth into the negotiation process. And there are processes that already exist, of which Dawda in particular is deeply involved in, through Youngo, through the Conference of Youth and local Conference of Youth processes. And yet we still don't necessarily, and the Global Youth Statement processes, and yet we still don't seem to be getting this traction of young voices into the negotiations. So I wanted to ask you both what it means to you to officially integrate youth voice into negotiations, what that could or should look like.
I think that would be a game changer, because I always say this, young people, we are very experienced. We are the ones who closely work with the communities, and we understand what they are going through. We have the traditional knowledge of the struggles that these communities go through. Most of these people who negotiate on our behalf do not touch base with the communities. They don't go into the remotest parts of the country, those communities that are really facing these climate crisis. So having us, the young people who have grassroots organizations dealing with these communities, we are able to speak to the people out there in the negotiation rooms, the struggles that those communities are going through and how we can address those issues. So that is why for us at Youngo, whether it is back at home, these are some of the things that we are advocating for. And we really have a very organized system that we start our COP processes 1 year before the COP itself, because we host our local conferences. This year, over 100 local conferences of youth were held across the world, and I was fortunate to be one of the facilitators helping those local conferences from different parts of the world to put their national youth statements together, which has been incorporated in the global youth statement. So you have the local local conferences of youth, you have the regional conferences of youth, and then the global conferences of youth. And at the local level, we have what we call the NYS, that is the National Youth Statements. Then at the regional level, we have the Regional Youth Statements, and at the global level, we have the Global Youth Statement. So we make sure all of these statements are incorporated into a single statement, and every year, when we come to COP, this is what we present to the COP presidency. This is the same document that we present to the UNFCCC Secretary General, the UN Secretary General. All of these very important or high caliber of people, we present these to them because they are the ones who are at the top of our affairs. They're the ones making these decisions on behalf of us. So we present these documents to them with the hope that they will listen to our cries. But unfortunately, we are in COP29 this year. Every year these documents are presented. We continue to re-echo the same challenges, the same problems that our communities are faced with, that young people are going through. But we find it very difficult to even be part of these negotiation rooms and be able to speak, to share our own experiences. Of course, recently we have to appreciate that a lot of youth programs have been coming up. Last year, I benefited from the International Youth Delegate Program by the COP28 presidency, which is the UAE, where 100 delegates were actually trained on climate negotiations to be able to at least be integrated in their country delegations in the next COP. And I am fortunate to be one of those that has been attached to our lead negotiator on climate finance. And I've been following climate change negotiation, even though I've not started speaking yet, but I am kind of a trainee. And hopefully in the next COP or the following one, I'll be able to say a thing or two on behalf of the young people. We acknowledge or appreciate the fact that progress is going, but we believe that it is slow, and we really want these things to be fast-tracked, because climate change is not going to wait for us. I mean, it's going to take its course on us, whether we take action or not. And I think it's high time that we really start taking action before climate change will take action on us. In fact, it has already started taking action on us anyways. But I still believe that we have an opportunity to be able to adapt to the changing climate.
Brilliant, thank you. Dorcas, you got anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, to add on what he has said in terms of how to integrate the youth into these international conferences, it will bring about shift in diversity and also inclusivity, because as you have said that we have the solutions, we have the fresh ideas, and as a young person coming from Africa and from Kenya, we are the ones at the ground working hand in hand with the community. So we know what they're experiencing. We know how it is hard for a girl to choose whether to go to school because she has no other towels for the menstruation. We're the one who see like how the rivers are dry up. We are the one who have to go to the fishermen, and they're like, we don't have fish, the ocean is full of acidity, there's a lot of global warming is affecting their fish catch. So we are the ones seeing these issues at the ground level, and so we already have the solutions on how to go about it. By involving the youth will bring about inclusivity and also bring about long-term sustainable ideas to bring about climate action in terms of adaptation as well. And also that and to add on that, then also it's very important that even in these negotiation rooms, sometimes you find like you're not able to speak or say something. So there is need for meaningful participation of the youth, whereby you're not just sitting down and them speaking, but also us saying and giving out our solutions and ideas. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you, Dorcas. So really, really looking for, in different ways, how do we make these inputs really meaningful? How do we get what's the best of coming out of young people's ideas, the ways in which they think, through the different lenses they have, through lenses that are diverse, that are inclusive, that are really respectful of the actual lived experience that people are having and how climate change is already impacting upon it, and getting it into these spaces. I'd like to build into a slightly different direction. There's quite a lot of young people in the room, and I think that both of you have been really inspirational in terms of the roles that you've taken. And I wanted to ask, actually, is there one sentence of advice that you would give to a young person who wanted to take action? And that could be in whatever geography. Is there one thing that you would say to them that they could do to take that next step into taking action themselves? And maybe Dorcas.
Okay. So I actually wrote it down, so I'm just going to read it. So as a young person who wants to join into climate action, because I also never had an idea of what climate change is. It's also new when I went to my university and I got to do marine science. So through that, I was able to know, okay, mangroves are affected, fish is affected, and so on. So as a young person who wants to join in this climate movement, you have to start where you are. It doesn't matter where you are, you ought to start now. And you use what you have in your capacity. You have to build alliances to amplify your voices. And because every action counts, no matter how small it is, it will contribute to a larger movement for climate justice. So they have to start and keep going and keep the faith.
So start, keep going, keep the faith, but it's also about people. It's the people that you work with and how you move that together. It's not just you on your own. That's really interesting. Dawda, over to you.
I mean, my message is going to be very short and clear, that as young people, we are not only passive victims of climate change, but we are able to provide solutions to the problems that we are encountering. So as a young person, do not be limited by some of these challenges that of course we have in our communities, but make sure that you push yourself, because that's how I have been able to do it, that despite all the challenges that I have in my community, I've been able to push myself and mobilize young people to be able to at least make a noticeable change in our community. And I think each and every young person within this building has that capacity, has that ability to be able to make this world a little better than they found it.
Wonderful, thank you. Some real words of wisdom there for any of the young people in the room who are thinking about this. I've got a final question before we move to audience questions, which comes back again to this point about youth integration into policy decisions and negotiating processes. And this is really to think about what calls for action do you have for policymakers who are here at COP29 when it comes to including youth voices in policy decisions? What do you really want to see? If you had one call to action for a policymaker, what would it be?
World are like the call to actions that there is nothing about us without us. So they have to involve us. Yeah, nothing else.
I mean, they always say anything for the youth without the youth is not for the youth. So, I mean, this is about our future. Most of the people who are in that negotiation room are in their 50s, 60s. And the challenges that we will be facing in the next decade or so, maybe some of them would not be here to experience that with us. So this is our problem, and that is why we are not even thinking, we believe that it is time for us to be in these spaces, to be able to speak and be able to share our perspectives and our ideas, because whatever decisions that we are going to make in those negotiation rooms are going to affect our lives as young people and children.
Fantastic, thank you both. What you've both said has reminded me really strongly of something that another young climate leader said in a previous iteration of the film, which was that if you're not at the table, then you're part of the meal. And I think that encapsulates what you've both said, but it's very powerful. I'd like to hand over to audience questions. We've got about 5 minutes. Yes, go ahead.
I was just curious because I agree with your point about like young people are definitely in the communities, they're being impacted, they have that type of experience of being directly affected by climate change. But how would you say, like, do you think it's necessary for when young people are a part of these conversations, like how can they be trained on the policy part and understanding that part of like the government process, or like do you think it's necessary to have that education while still having the experience, or you're able to be in these rooms without that?
Before we answer, are there any other questions? We may take more than one at a time. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks again for everything. I'm curious about how you navigate older generations who might not take you seriously, and especially curious about the training and how much of like a socialization is that versus a maybe empowerment, inclusive piece there.
Brilliant. It feels like there's lots to get into there, but if there's anyone who's got a really burning short question, okay, no, in which case, would you like to take that first one, Dawda?
I mean, the questions are almost similar. Of course, young people would need capacity building to be able to do this work. And that is why, through my organization, Help Gambia and the Gambia Environmental Alliance, what we do back home is that we try to organize capacity building for young people to be able to understand what climate change in the first place is. I will give you a very good example. Through the ELCOIS that we organized, there were so many young people who came to that space that did not know what climate change is all about. And what we try to do is, during the conference, we always have trainings and breakout sessions where we introduce some of them to those issues. And we always invite our lead negotiators to be able to come and kind of help us decode some of these very scientific words that people may find very difficult to be able to understand. And that way, we're able to build the capacity of many of them. And I really have a success story of 2 young people who came to that conference, and today they are able to lead their own start their own gardens in their community. One of them even started advocacy in his school, where he started a small club trying to share whatever he learns from the conference. So I totally agree that we need some form of capacity building, some form of training to be able to do this work. It doesn't have to be someone starting just because they have interest in advocating for climate change and just going into the communities and talking to people about climate change when they don't really even, in fact, understand what climate change in the first place is. So I think that is really important. And sometimes you understand it's really challenging for young people in very remote communities to have access to these things. And what we did this year, because that has been a recommendation from young people from the rural communities, that they also want to participate in these activities, but they don't have access. So we made sure this year we dedicate 25% of our sponsorship to young people from the rural communities, and they were able to come, stay in the urban area. We provided accommodation for them and transport so that they can also benefit from those trainings. So that is really important, yeah. And you asked, how do we navigate this?
And
yeah.
I think there was a bit of a focus as well on sort of policy-specific knowledge, so going beyond advocacy and actually how are young people trained so that they have knowledge in the specific areas of policy that they might be advocating for?
Yeah, kind of like maybe an older generation or some sort of like socialization that is kind of taking away from power that you are building. How do you navigate kind of being talked down to if that is happening?
Dawda?
So I'm still trying to figure out what the question is, but are you trying to ask how do we kind of navigate through these challenges that we have in terms of our advocacy? How do we influence policy and all of that? Maybe you have to reframe the question in a way.
So I'm curious, just kind of like, you know, there's a language of policy, there's a language of technical that, you know, comes with like supposed expertise.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, it's hard to enter conversations when people like see expertise wielded in different ways. Not to say that like you have to go to school to, you know, speak the language. So being able to still access those conversations, like have you been able to navigate this sort of like, you know, the language barriers around expertise, or like whatever expertise is counted as or not counted as? And I think you're answering the question, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was saying the questions are kind of similar. But of course, I talked about decoding the language, because sometimes it's really difficult, even for some of us who have been in this space for quite a long time, that some of these UNFCCC languages, we don't really understand them when they talk about them. And this year, what we did was, during our conference, we brought someone who has 30 years of experience in negotiations. So it's like since the COP started, he has been attending the COPs and he has never missed a single COP. He can stand before you and talk about how the COPs came into existence, what they do and everything. So experienced people like them, we bring them in the space to be able to help us understand some of these things, so that when we also speak or when we also talk to our peers, we're able to make them understand some of these issues. And this year what we did was, after that training, we also had our own negotiation simulation where we divided the young people in different regions that they represent to negotiate on behalf of their regions, because each region has a specific problem that is peculiar to them. So that negotiation also, that simulation exercise really helped them in terms of practicing or applying whatever they've learned during the training. Yeah, so I hope that actually addresses the question.
Yeah, so I'm still new in the policy. That's why I was like him saying, I'm also going to class maybe next year to learn more how to become a negotiator who has, you know, because the terms in terms of negotiating are very complex. It's a very technical aspect. You have to go to study, you have to go to get to receive education, you have to be skilled enough for you to sit at that table and just use the terms that they use in those rooms. So there is need for going for more studies and, you know, expanding your knowledge in this aspect of UNFCCC engagement and negotiation. So there is need to learn more. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. I might actually add a couple of comments onto this. I think you've spoken about this really, really clearly. It strikes me that there are two sides to this. There's capacity building to enable people to take action within their communities, to drive real change, and there's capacity building to enable young people to engage effectively with negotiation processes. And those are two different things. Yeah. They might be done by the same young people often, and we see that a lot, but they are two different things. There's various bodies who are trying to do the latter in particular. There's the Youth Negotiators Academy, who do great work in training up young negotiators. There's a number of very, very homegrown diplomacy organisations that are youth-led, trying to get young people to train up other young people. Do come up and talk if you're interested in that later on. With an aim to get people being able to be really effective in these situations. And we're aware of at least one or two other organisations who are looking to provide really effective training. The training, however, doesn't take you all the way. It enables you to kind of come through the door, but unless parties or governments have political will to have young people meaningfully engaged with their negotiating parties, they're still not going to be meaningfully involved in the decision-making processes. I think we're pretty much at time. Is there a final word either of you would like to say on these topics before we close up?
I just want to encourage everyone to keep the fire burning. This is our fight. We must not relent. We know that we come to COPs most of the times, go and then leave the COPs disappointed. But what can we do? We cannot stay back, because this is where governments always come every year. to decide on our behalf. So if we decide to sit back and not participate, they would still decide for us. So, I mean, we don't have any choice. We always have to be in this space to make sure we put pressure on them when they are doing that, when they are deciding on our behalf, even if they're making it very difficult for us to be in these spaces. Let's keep pushing, and hopefully we will be able to actually break into the system and take charge of our destiny.
Yeah, so my last word is that if the environment is affected, the people will be affected. And if we are affected, then everything else is affected. So we need to take action now, and let's make this planet a healthy and sustainable planet to live in.
I have nothing to add to that. Can we have a round of applause for our young people who spoke to us today?